everyone, and welcome to Functional Fertility, the podcast designed to demystify your hormones, up-level your lifestyle, and supercharge your fertility potential. I'm your host, Dr. Kalia Waddles, and today's episode is dedicated to one of my personal favorite topics. If you've been a listener for a while, you know I have a deep love for mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. And you've heard me say that if I had to choose just one thing to work on to support my own fertility, it would be to bolster my mitochondrial health. So today is very special because we're talking about this beloved topic with a dear friend of mine, Dr. Jillian Moehle. Dr. Moehle is a naturopathic doctor and a certified functional medicine practitioner specializing in men's and women's hormonal health. She's really passionate about empowering people to feel their absolute best throughout all life stages by leveraging the best of modern medicine and natural therapeutics. I've been waiting for this moment to have her on the show. Welcome, Dr. Moehle.
Thank you, Kalia. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, the world needs to know that you and I have been working together for some time, and we have a shared love of a couple different things, large orange cats being the most important, reading research papers about hormones, and then learning all things mitochondria and doing mitochondrial experiments on ourselves. So that is what has brought us to this moment today.
Yes, it has. I think that all of these shared interests have really allowed our paths to culminate into this exciting moment. And
Yes.
I'm excited to share all of this with your listeners.
Well, we talk about mitochondria with some regularity because I love them so much. And maybe not everyone had as an excellent 10th grade biology teacher as I did. So shout out to Mrs. Jody Maris. If for some weird reason you're listening to this episode, thank you for instilling a love of mitochondria in me. We have to take it back to the very beginning. In case anybody is not familiar with the mitochondria and what they do, just give us a primer on what mitochondria really are.
Yeah. So as you already mentioned, the mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. I think this kind of brings everybody back to 10th grade biology, 9th grade biology. Whenever you had that life-changing biology class, everybody knows mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. But what does that really mean? Well, mitochondria are really involved in the electron transport chain. So this might be triggering some good memories for some not good memories for others. But essentially, the electron transport chain is what is used to do something called oxidative phosphorylation. And what oxidative phosphorylation does in the mitochondria is takes nutrients essentially from our diet and then converts it into ATP. And ATP is like the currency of the cell, right? It's like the money that we need to do basically anything physiologically. And that's really the main purpose of the mitochondria. But, you know, all of these amazing things come at a cost, right? So mitochondria do produce some toxic byproducts. They produce carbon dioxide, which we breathe off, so no problem there. But mitochondria also create a lot of oxidative stress in the body. So it's really important to have well-functioning mitochondria that are dying when they need to and recycling themselves so that they're not actually contributing to more oxidative stress in the body. So really amazing little organelles, but we have to really give them a lot of love to make sure that they're functioning optimally.
I love the way you describe it as the currency, because I talk about that a lot. And when I'm working with patients, I say, you know, ovulation, fertilization, implantation, early embryo development, those are energetically expensive processes. They take a lot of energy.
Yes.
And when we think about it in terms of like that currency and how much of it we would need to drive forward these really important processes, I think it's easier to conceptualize. So now we know what mitochondria do, and let's focus this on fertility because that's what this show is all about. And there's actually some implications in both male and female fertilities. Let's tease this apart a little bit. Will you tell us some of the most important high yield pieces of information about why mitochondrial health might be so important for achieving a healthy pregnancy?
Sure. So I think you really hit the nail on the head with with the preconception stages being really energetically demanding. And then, of course, once an embryo is developing, that's an exceptionally energetically demanding physiological situation. So certainly mitochondria play a huge role here. And one of the ways that they do so actually is because of their ability to regulate calcium. So calcium exchange is really important when it comes to all of these aspects of fertility, actually aspects of all sorts of different physiology, like muscle movement, neurotransmitter function, hormonal signaling, just these basic physiological processes. But that really comes back to fertility as well. So let's kind of break it down into men, women, embryo. So we'll start off with sperm because it's easier. It's more straightforward. So sperm, they rely very heavily on their mitochondria as well. Each sperm contains about 50 to 75 mitochondria. And the main function of these little organelles in the sperm is really to support mobility. So how well the sperm can move. And then it also plays a big role in fusion of the sperm to the oocyte. So really, without highly functioning mitochondria, sperm are not going to get very far in life. So we really need those 50 to 75 mitochondria to be functioning very well. So another difference between sperm and egg is that sperm mitochondria are not transferred to the embryo. So it might kind of seem like, oh, well, if they're not transferred to the embryo, how important are they? They're very important because we really do need them, again, to just get to the location, get to that destination, and then be able to perform fusion. So men should also be really thinking about how they can support their mitochondria as well if fertility is the goal. And then when it comes to oocyte mitochondria, actually the highest density of mitochondria DNA is in the mature oocyte, which is something that is really fascinating to me.
Coolest piece of trivia. Love it.
Right? I know. If anyone's ever on Jeopardy and they need to know this information, there you go. So really, really high density of mitochondria in the mature oocyte. And not only are the mitochondria really important for overall conditioning of the oocyte quality, mostly with regard to how the chromosomes in that cell are divided during maturation, but because the mitochondria of the oocyte are transmitted to the embryo, any abnormalities that are seen in the oocyte are also going to impact the health of the future embryo. So not only can mitochondrial dysfunction of the oocyte contribute to that viability of the embryo, but it can also contribute to issues down the road for the offspring. And these kinds of issues that you're seeing like down the road and the offspring really are more involved with mitochondrial diseases where the mitochondrial DNA is actually mutated. Not so much in the context of like dysfunctional mitochondria in the average person, like we're kind of discussing here. So once that embryo is formed, the embryo is entirely dependent on the mitochondria that are inherited from mom for all energy production. And there's actually been some really interesting studies linking low ATP production in both fertilization failure, as well as issues with embryonic development. And I think that this is kind of a growing area of research at this time in terms of fertility, IVF. It's sort of like a new target for how we can support those who are trying to achieve pregnancy.
Yeah. And I have to say, if anyone else has ever looked at a semen sample under the microscope, they need to be able to swim forward in a kind of a straight line, like you said, to be able to meet their destination. And the first time I ever looked at a sample under the microscope, I was shocked at how many sperm will like go in a circle. They'll kind of chase their tail. They really need that mitochondrial energy production to swim roughly straight and have some direction. And I just have to do a special shout out to DNA repair genes. It's not exactly related to mitochondria, but I think it's so fascinating. And you were reminding me of this, that the sperm is hopefully going to meet the egg. It's going to undergo this acrosome reaction where its DNA is going to be transferred into the egg cell. And then in the setting of healthy mitochondria and great antioxidant capacity inside that egg, our egg is actually going to go to work repairing any damaged DNA from that sperm. And the fact that that happens is mind-blowing to me. That our bodies have the capacity to even do that is just truly astounding. But if we, the more mitochondrial dysfunction in either the egg or the sperm, or the more inflammation, the more oxidative stress, the more DNA damage, the less efficiently that pathway, that process is going to work. So I think we're starting to build this case for why it's really, really important. Like you said, not just to like prevent these frank mitochondriopathies in the future, but just to make sure that that process of the sperm meeting the egg and fertilization can even happen, right? So I think that really makes a lot of sense. When you're working with patients, we're trained in functional medicine to listen to history, to pay attention to the patient's story, and to collect all these clues from, what they tell us and the labs we collect. Are there some signs and symptoms that you notice that might clue us in to a need for a little mitochondrial support? Like, how can we start to build that persona of, oh, well, that's me. I probably need a little mitochondrial love?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, because mitochondria are present in most cells and tissues of the body, symptoms of dysfunction can be really, really broad, and they're really variable. And then, we kind of have to come back to the question of what do we even mean by dysfunction, right? What are dysfunctional mitochondria? And essentially, we're just talking about reduced capacity of that electron transport chain to produce ATP. So anytime we're at essentially an energy deficit in the cell, no matter what system we're talking about, it's going to contribute to some symptoms. And the severity of those, definitely, there's a wide range. But I would say that the most common symptoms that I see clinically, and that I, talk to my colleagues about often, are things like fatigue, brain fog, metabolic issues like weight gain, diabetes, insulin resistance, and even chronic pain, really. These all share a lot of overlap with chronic diseases as well. But, I would argue, especially in the context of fertility, that anyone could benefit from mitochondrial support, even if they're not dealing with some of these symptoms. To be honest, I don't know anybody who is like, I've never dealt with any fatigue or brain fog in my life, so I think I'm good. I don't need to do any mitochondrial support. But even somebody who does feel fantastic most of the time, I think could benefit from giving their mitochondria a little bit of love, because we are just exposed to so many environmental toxins, air pollution, stress, traumatic events. All of these things can contribute to suboptimal mitochondrial function. So I think it's definitely worth everybody's time to kind of focus on this target.
I absolutely agree. Like you said, just being alive in the world, we're engaging in all of these things that probably make it worthwhile for us to support our mitochondria. And I think that's one reason why this multi-system, very vague symptom picture, because of mitochondrial's role in all of these different tissue types and processes, it makes it really hard to say, oh, yep, this is clearly a mitochondrial issue, because, fatigue, that could be iron deficiency, it could be thyroid issues. So it's so hard. It makes sense. This is low-hanging fruit just to support our mitochondria. And one thing I think about all the time, because of my interest in reproductive longevity specifically, is how the mitochondrial function changes with age. And this is one thing when we think about the fertility cliff. It's not that you just wake up on your 35th birthday and now all of a sudden you're infertile, right? But there are physiological changes that happen over time that can contribute to subfertility. And I think one of those things could be mitochondrial function. So walk us through how our mitochondria just changes with the passing of time.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I have a strong interest in this area too, personally, and because a lot of my female friends are in this position. A lot of 30-something-year-olds are delaying having children at this point, in favor of focusing on their careers and economic gain and all of these really important things, or just not interested in having children until they're at a certain point in life. And so I think that it's really important to have these conversations about how can we how can we extend our fertile window so that we can get all that we want out of life, and also have healthy pregnancies, right?
Yes.
So how the question is, how does mitochondrial function change with age? Okay. So again, this comes back to that electron transport chain and the creation of ATP, energy currency, right? So with age, we know that there is a decreased capacity for the electron transport chain to do its job. And then the question is, well, is that because the mitochondria are aging, or is it because we just have just general reduced efficiency? I'm not sure. I don't think science has the answer at this point. But we do know that it could be due to decreased quantity of mitochondria. It could be to decreased quality of mitochondria. And it could also be due to inadequate substrates or like ingredients for the mitochondria to do their job. So again, this is seen with normal aging processes, right? Like things change physiologically as we age. This is not, it doesn't mean that it's pathological. It just means we have some changes. But I think there are things that we can do to kind of target those changes. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But, the difference between normal aging and then chronic diseases is pretty significant. And these chronic diseases, things like neurodegenerative disease, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, autoimmune conditions, mood disorders, all of these things are very energetically demanding for the mitochondria. And part of that is because they either create oxidative stress in the body or they're a result of oxidative stress in the body. And that's a huge burden for the mitochondria. And then the question is, well, why does this happen with age? So the proposed mechanisms really have to do with that increased oxidative stress. So increased reactive oxygen species in the body, that can be due to environmental exposures. It can be due to stress, trauma. Again, I mean, there's really interesting studies on just psychological trauma actually increasing oxidative stress in the body, which I find fascinating. So things like that are generating a reactive oxygen species, DNA mutations, this can come along with environmental exposures as well. And then impaired energy metabolism through all of these energetic pathways. These all can cause mitochondrial dysfunction and aging. It's also known that mitophagy, the process of those old mitochondria kind of recycling themselves and turning over, this process declines with age as well. So that means that we have more dysfunctional mitochondria hanging around. And like I said earlier, mitochondria do create toxic byproducts in the body. They're like major producers of oxidative stress. And so if we have dysfunctional mitochondria hanging around, we actually are putting ourselves at risk of creating more oxidative stress in the body.
I think about my own mitochondria, maybe like a pathological amount.
Me too.
As I get older, I'm always wondering about the function. And I think this is the appropriate time to bring up this term inflammaging, and how in the setting like you're just describing of lots of oxidative stress and chronic inflammation, we see this acceleration of the aging process in the body. And I think that's certainly related to our mitochondrial health. So I'm always thinking about, okay, how can I support a healthy balance of inflammation, just the right amount of inflammation to help my body be resilient, but not so much inflammation that I'm causing damage to tissues. And this other piece, it took me a while to like conceptually link these things together, is the connection with DHEA. And we know that our production of DHEA, which is an adrenal androgen, like really drops off in our 30s. And I think that's unjust in general, and not a fan of that happening, but it does. And we know that DHEA can really bolster mitochondrial energy production. And I've just come to this recently that it makes a lot of sense that as our DHEA is falling off, we might have less kind of effective and efficient mitochondrial energy production. So there's all these pieces that we can think about. But the good news is, like, we can measure these things and we can treat them accordingly, right? And that's the perfect window for me to ask you about testing. Are there some tools that you're using to test either mitochondrial function or mitochondrial health, or to help us to understand the context of someone's body that might be influencing their mitochondrial health?
Sure. So outside of like the research lab, we don't really have a lot of tools clinically that allow us to really directly measure how well a mitochondria is functioning. But fortunately, in the functional medicine world, we do have a lot of options for kind of assessing function in a more indirect way. And I like this because it actually gives us a better picture of the whole person. Like, how is this whole system running? And it gives us a little bit more of like a bird's eye view versus just like, how is this one like tissue sample functioning, right? So a lot of clinicians will use organic acid testing or oat testing. And this sort of testing looks at a person's metabolic pathways, which helps to determine specific nutrient deficiencies or insufficiencies and how these might be contributing to issues with these different energetic pathways. One being, the electron transport chain, which involves the mitochondria. So organic acids, for those who are not familiar, are the metabolic byproducts of these energy producing pathways. And so when you look at these, if you see any irregularities in levels of these acids, whether they're high or they're low, you can kind of start to pinpoint where there might be issues in those different energy producing pathways. I also find it really helpful to look at specific markers of oxidative stress. Because again, I mean, the whole focus of this talk really is like, what are the impacts of oxidative stress, right? Because it plays such a role. But we know that the oxidative stress can really contribute to both mitochondrial dysfunction and be worsened by mitochondrial dysfunction. So I think it's really, really helpful to be looking at these markers just as kind of a general guideline. So I'm typically looking at the markers 8-OHDG and lipid peroxidase. 8-OHDG is better. It's a better measurement of just kind of like overall oxidative stress in the body. Lipid peroxidase assesses the oxidation of polyunsaturated fats. And then there's another test called F2 isoprostanes, and this looks at oxidation of arachidonic acid, which is already a very inflammatory molecule. And so when you get oxidation of the arachidonic acid, it can be a major generator of oxidative stress. And then I can also take a look at certain antioxidative nutrients in the blood, like glutathione, CoQ10, and magnesium is also very helpful to look at. So those are kind of the general biomarkers that I'm looking at when I'm trying to assess mitochondrial function in a patient.
I think we've talked about this before, but when I did this testing on myself a couple years ago, let me tell you, I was shocked by these results. And I have a whole nutrition degree. Like, I know how to eat healthfully. And I think the lesson that taught me is that it's not just about what you're eating. It's how you're eating and when you're eating and your stress and your sleep and all these other things going on. Because on paper, it looked like I was doing great, right? But I had like no stomach acid, wasn't absorbing these nutrients, was eating while I was super distracted. And then there were all these other contextual factors going on. And I found that measuring these things was so empowering because I was able to add specificity to what I was doing. It was highly motivating for my behavior change. So I'm just putting a plug in. Like, if you have access to the testing, it's so helpful in the right situation.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I usually give people the option when I'm working with them because people are coming from different backgrounds, right? Some people can't afford testing or don't want to. They're like, I just kind of want to do everything. And so I'm happy to work through this stuff on a symptom basis and take kind of like a broad approach. But I totally agree. Like, having that data that gives you an ability to really target specific pathways and to be really specific in your treatment plans it's really wonderful.
Let's talk about treatment, because I know that our listeners are like, okay, I get it. I got to support my mitochondria. So what do I do about it? Let's kind of build a therapeutic hierarchy where we start with lifestyle first. What are some of the most important lifestyle factors that can help to protect our mitochondrial integrity?
Yeah, such a good question. And I mean, this is like foundational, right? Because like you're saying, you can do all of the right things. You can eat the diet, you can take all the supplements. Like, you can never out supplement an unhealthy lifestyle. Not that you have an unhealthy lifestyle, but
well, that was to be debated at the time.
The lifestyle is really important, right? And I think that For me, what I kind of identify as the most important pillars would be sleep, exercise, and nutrition, right? And so sleep is such a big one. I focus on it a lot with my patients and with myself. I prioritize this over in more recent years, I've really started prioritizing sleep in my life, and it's made such a difference for me personally. And people struggle with it. I think that our lifestyles these days don't allow for great sleep and relaxation, and it's so important. You can't even get the benefits out of your workout that you would normally if you're not getting good sleep. You can't assimilate your nutrients. Your blood sugar goes crazy if you don't have good sleep, even if you're eating a healthy diet. I believe that sleep is a really important foundation for all of the other lifestyle measures. So one of the reasons why sleep is so important specifically for mitochondria is that because the brain is so metabolically active, it develops a lot of metabolic waste products because of that activity during the day. And so the brain is able to rid itself of these waste products during sleep. And this is part of something called the glymphatic system, which is essentially like washing away of these byproducts at night. And without adequate sleep, specifically deep sleep, the removal of these waste products isn't possible. And that means that the mitochondria can be exposed to these products and be harmed by them. And so over time, this can certainly lead to mitochondrial dysfunction in the brain tissue specifically. And then exercise is another pillar. Exercise is incredibly important for so many reasons, especially with aging. I mean, if we're talking about prolonging our fertile window and aging really healthfully, really maintaining skeletal muscle it's extremely critical, especially for women. Like women start losing about, I want to say 1% of their muscle mass per year starting in their 30s unless they're actively maintaining it. So I'm really big on this. As I said earlier, skeletal muscle contains a really high density of mitochondria, and exercise stimulates more mitochondrial growth. And it also increases the respiratory capacity of those skeletal muscle cells. So this is the whole idea behind training, right? You're training those muscles. They're increasing their mitochondrial density, and then you can do more. Oxidative phosphorylation, create more ATP in those muscle cells. So I think that exercise should really be a focus in terms of lifestyle for mitochondrial health. And then when it comes to nutrition and nutrients, eating an antioxidant-rich, whole foods-based diet is kind of the place to be when you're thinking about mitochondria. I always recommend focusing on including the most colorful fruits and veggies that you possibly can. These all tend to be really, really high in antioxidants. Incorporating polyphenol-rich foods. These are the deeply pigmented fruits and vegetables, things like purple cabbage, dark berries, pomegranate, green tea, grapeseed oil. These are all polyphenol rich compounds as well. These foods are not only antioxidant rich, but they're also really highly anti-inflammatory and are implicated in improving cardiovascular disease risk and also preventing neurodegenerative disease. So super, super important. Including high quality omega-3 fatty acids is also very important for both that anti-inflammatory effect. These fats are also known to help support the brain tissue, which again is really dense in mitochondria. So we want to make sure that we're getting our omega-3s as well. Things like fish, fatty fish oil, all of those good things. And really making sure that we're focusing on a low glycemic diet. So keeping our blood sugar stable, not letting our insulin get too high. These are all really important for mitochondrial health. And then the last piece about diet that I think is potentially the most important and the most low-hanging fruit, and that's avoidance of alcohol. Like alcohol, and I'm sorry, this is maybe not good news for some people, but I don't think it's a secret anymore that alcohol in any amount is not good for us. I mean, I think even the red wine, like benefits are being questioned and kind of debunked at this point, but alcohol is a mitochondrial poison, right? And it leads to damaged, leaky, and dysfunctional mitochondria. So if mitochondrial health is your priority and that's like, what you're going for, I would say at least significantly reducing or eliminating alcohol is one of the best places to start when it comes to diet.
There's so much to think about with these recommendations, but it's funny. It's like we hear all the time, oh, an egg health diet or a fertility diet, and it's really focused on these pillars that you're talking about. And I think the reason why we've included all of these things in an egg health support is because of the way that they power up the mitochondria. So it makes great sense. And I've said this quote on this show before, but I saw like on Instagram or something, somebody said, if you are getting up at 5 a.m. to exercise after you only slept for 5 or 6 hours, that is like stepping over dollars to get to pennies. And that made such good sense to me. Like, we got to prioritize sleep, and the way that you link that to how it can improve your exercise performance, I think is really well said, and something that we, like, even if we had to create a hierarchy within lifestyle, I would almost say that sleep is one of the most important. But of course, we're well-rounded and we want to do them all. Okay, so we're going to do all these lifestyle factors. Let's say we want to escalate. We want to bring on some supplements, nutraceuticals. What are your go-tos?
Yeah, so this is the fun part, right, where we get to add things. And again, we can't out supplement the lifestyle piece, but there's certainly some things that we can add in. So I think that, there's a handful of good ones out there. There's a lot of combination products available on the market that have different formulas with blends of some of these nutrients I'm going to talk about. But on an individual level, I think one of the first nutraceuticals or supplements that I think of when it comes to mitochondrial health is CoQ10. And this has been linked with alleviating inflammation, reducing oxidative stress, and decreasing symptoms of aging. And that's largely in part due to its support of mitochondria. CoQ10 is actually directly involved in shuttling electrons on the electron transport chain. So if you're deficient in CoQ10, that electron transport chain is just not going to be functioning optimally. So I think that, CoQ10 is one of those things that you can test in the blood. It's an easy test. I don't think it's that expensive. You can run it through LabCorp even. If you're low, I think it's definitely worth supplementing with. The next one would be ALA, or alpha lipoic acid, which is an antioxidant that's really integral in breaking down carbohydrates, so that those carbohydrates can then be used in the electron transport chain. Really interestingly, even the Mitochondrial Medicine Society is recommending ALA for individuals with these mitochondrial diseases, mitochondriopathies. So far, there's not any good randomized controlled trials yet, but if the Mitochondrial Medicine Society is recommending it, I think that's pretty good. The next one that I like to use often for a lot of different conditions that are more of those fatiguing conditions, like chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, long COVID, stuff like that, is acetyl L-carnitine. And carnitine is really interesting because it actually allows for transport of long chain fatty acids across the mitochondrial membrane into the cell so that it can start to make ATP. And then there's some also pretty interesting research out there that suggests that it might help to remove toxic metabolites from the mitochondria as well. So it might help improve the functionality and the longevity of that mitochondria. Another one that's gotten a lot of media attention in more recent years is NAD, particularly as an anti-aging target. NAD and its precursors NR and NMR. NAD stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, but NAD is a lot easier to say. NAD is really hard to absorb orally because it's a pretty big molecule. So there's been a lot more interest in supplementing with NR and NMN that then kind of reconstruct themselves in the body once you've taken them to support NAD levels in the body. More recent studies that have been looking at NMN specifically for longevity haven't really panned out in the way that people expected them to. So I don't use these a lot clinically. They tend to be really expensive. And people I would say some people feel really good on them, but it kind of seems to be lackluster for most. I have treated people with IV NAD in the past for things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, long COVID. And I will say that it's a game changer for some, but for some, it's also kind of lackluster and they're pretty costly out of pocket. The next and potentially my favorite nutrient that I like to talk about with mitochondrial health is glutathione, which is the most, we love glutathione, don't we? So glutathione is the most abundant antioxidant in the body, and we make it endogenously, but it also is one of these things that starts to decline with age. Glutathione is super abundant actually inside of the mitochondria, and it seems to help with mitigating oxidative stress inside the mitochondria. So if we don't have adequate levels of glutathione, the mitochondria just can't really do their job. They get too much oxidative stress building up, and then they function really poorly. So glutathione tends to decline with age as well, but also things like poor diet, chronic infections, stress, and then those chronic diseases that are really highly energy demanding, like, again, chronic infections, cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, all of these things creating oxidative stress that require glutathione to kind of tamp down that oxidative stress because of its antioxidant capabilities. So when we're supplementing with glutathione, because it's not highly available orally, it's really important to be looking for a liposomal form of glutathione. There's a few good supplement options out there, but it's also available in an intravenous delivery format, which is one of my preferred options. This needs to be done at obviously a qualified clinic, and you need to have blood work and stuff done first, but it's a really good option for a lot of people. And then I think that phosphatidylcholine should get some honorable mention here. It's sort of like a new kid on the block, I think, but phosphatidylcholine is the most abundant phospholipid in the mitochondrial membrane. So again, phosphatidylcholine is one of those things that declines with age. Like, how many times do I have to say that today? Unfortunately, everything seems to decline with age. So I think there's a lot more attention lately on supplementing with these phospholipids mostly for cellular integrity. And in this case, the phosphatidylcholine phospholipid is the best option for supporting that mitochondrial membrane. So that's my top, 6, 7. That's a start.
Those are the VIPs. I love it. Those are so many of my favorites too. And any of my patients who are listening are going to laugh because they know that I try to turn CoQ10 because of it being so beneficial for both male and female fertility. I'm like, listen, you can get one bottle and you can share it and you take it at the same time. It's basically like you're on a date. It's so romantic. And you just take it together. And I love it.
Totally.
You also mentioned, so this is the perfect lead into my next question for you, because you mentioned NAD or its precursors like NR and NMN, and I have been really experimenting with this because we have, not in humans, but there's some interesting mice studies that it can help to reverse ovarian aging. So I'm like experimenting with these different forms. There's transdermal form that you can do. There's a subcutaneous form. There's a nasal spray, and I'm doing all these experiments. So stay tuned for my update episode. But I know on good authority that you have been doing some experiments on yourself too with some mitochondrial support, which maybe is like the next tier of fancy therapeutics that we could use. And I'm hoping you'd be willing to reveal your experiment that you've been doing.
The grand reveal. Yeah, of course. Okay, so I want to talk about this exciting new thing that I've been trying personally, but I also want to talk about two other therapeutics that are semi-lifestyle related and sort of not, but they're not necessarily fancy, but I think they're really important. And that is the impact of hot and cold stress on mitochondria.
Yes.
So, right? So exciting. I love this field that is just rapidly emerging in research when it comes to longevity and neurodegeneration and all of these amazing things. So I read this really interesting study recently. It wasn't a huge study. It was actually pretty small, but basically they took this group of people who, I'm not sure if they actually had injuries or not, or if they just decided to immobilize the muscle. I think they probably just decided to immobilize the muscle. I can't remember which muscle it was. Sorry, terrible memory. But they immobilized a muscle for 10 days, right? And when you immobilize a muscle for 10 days, especially if it's a big muscle, it's always going to be subject to atrophy. Like no matter how good of health you're in, if you don't move a muscle, it's going to start losing its mass and degrading essentially. So what they did is they immobilized the same muscle in these individuals. They applied heat treatments to the areas daily. And then they monitored mitochondrial function. And they found that daily heat treatments to that specific area actually prevented mitochondrial loss, and it prevented muscle atrophy by 37%, which is no joke when it comes to the world of rehabilitation. I mean, 37% is very significant. So I was really excited by that. And it's such an easy thing to do, right? Just slap a heat pack on an immobilized muscle, like perfect. Love it. And then there's also some interesting studies out there on the effects of sauna therapy. And I'm really excited about this because, Kalia, I think another shared love of ours is sauna. So I am always excited to be learning about sauna and all of the reasons why I should be doing it more. So these studies basically across the board are showing that regular sauna use can improve mitochondrial density and function, both in short and long-term use. And these benefits are actually noticed in just 1 week of sauna therapy. So it's a really easy thing to do. Of course, some precautions need to be taken in individuals who are not conditioned to be, in a high heat environment. So obviously, like, people need to be careful and consult with their physicians before they start jumping in the sauna. But I think this is a really promising area. It's easy to do, right? Like, you, aside from the cost of getting a sauna, if you don't have one, or, finding one at the gym, but there's all of these little at-home ones that are becoming available on the market. And I think that sauna is becoming a lot more accessible to people, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
Okay.
I sent a sauna blanket, by the way, just in case anybody is like, I don't have room for a whole sauna. I have a sauna blanket. It's like the size of a sleeping bag, and it's incredible.
Yes, exactly. I love that. And, there's some data out there that sauna before bedtime can improve sleep quality. So I'm telling you, lots of reasons to get on the sauna blanket train. Yeah. And then when it comes to cold thermogenesis, I'm much less excited about this. Like, I'm excited about the physiological benefits, but I'm not excited about doing the activity because it's not as enjoyable as sauna to me. But cold thermogenesis is really fantastic at activating something called brown fat, which is the really metabolically active form of fat that we all have. And it contains a ton of mitochondria. So this type of fat actually, it gets energy through burning regular fat through fat oxidation. And that's how it makes its fuel. And the more brown fat you have, the higher mitochondrial density you have, and the more ATP production you get. So, do some cold therapy as well. It's not as fun, but I mean, it doesn't have to be like a cold plunge, which is so popular these days, but even just a cold shower. Sometimes you have to work up to the very cold, longer showers, but just a little cold shower after a sauna even can really make all the difference.
Put on some good music. That's my secret, is put on some good music that will distract your brain from the cold.
Yeah, I think distraction is key.
Okay, so we're going to do sauna. We're going to take our just a cold shower.
We'll start there.
Yeah.
Okay, so the new and exciting thing that I am trying to support my own mitochondria is methylene blue, which is not by any means a new thing, but it's new in the world of mitochondrial support interest. So methylene blue is a super interesting drug. It was actually classically used to treat malaria, methemoglobinemia, and carbon monoxide poisoning. And it also has been used in the lab as a histological dye, which is it's interesting. Like, if you look at the pills, they're blue. And I'll tell you about some of the other blue side effects that are involved. But when it comes to this drug, it's incredible because it's very safe. It's really well tolerated, even at these higher doses that are used to treat those conditions like malaria and the carbon monoxide poisoning. So there's been this growing interest. I don't even know how the growing interest came to be in the world of like longevity when it comes to methylene blue, but I'm glad that it did. I'm glad that it's getting more attention. So basically, how methylene blue works to support mitochondria is that it reroutes electrons on that electron transport chain to essentially increase mitochondrial function while reducing the oxidative stress that the mitochondria make, which is like a win-win situation, right? And methylene blue also seems to be very mitochondrial protective in that regard, but it's also highly neuroprotective and antioxidative. So there's a lot of interest in using this compound for treatment and prevention of Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's. It's used in acute and chronic TBI treatment and also in early signs of cognitive decline. And then functional medicine doctors are also using it clinically to treat mood disorders and chronic infections as well. So super interesting new kid on the block. I did say that I would share some of the interesting blue side effects, which are...
I need to hear it. This is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, right. So there's the disclaimer on this medication that it can turn your secretions blue. So most commonly that is going to be urine. If you're taking it at higher doses, it can even turn your sweat and tears blue. I have not experienced that personally. I'm taking a very, very low dose. I'm basically microdosing methylene blue, but it does turn my urine a nice turquoise hue. Mm-hmm. And what I find most interesting about this is that it's not immediate. Like, if you take a B vitamin, a couple hours later, your urine is like fluorescent yellow. Well, with methylene blue, it could take, it's kind of variable. I've been trying to track a pattern on it, but it'll be like 7 hours later, I'll have some blue urine. And then the next morning when I wake up, I'll have blue urine again. And that would be like that would be about 24 hours after my dose. So I'm trying to figure out what that is about and what that means. Do you have any thoughts, Kalia?
No, but now I'm going to need you to blog about this so that I can also track what's going on with you. Do you feel anything different? Do you notice anything, or we're just trusting the process?
No, it's really interesting. I was just talking to a friend about this. I am usually shocked if I feel different when I'm taking a supplement. And I noticed a subtle difference with the methylene blue. I think that my focus is a little bit better. I think that my energy during the day is better. The last couple of weeks have been really busy, and I've been kind of burning the candle at both ends. And on days that I feel like I shouldn't feel super great, I actually feel pretty good. And I attribute that to the methylene blue. So, I think that I would love to repeat my oxidative stress and mitochondrial markers again, maybe in a month or so, and see if there's been any improvements.
Please let us know, because I'm so invested in whether or not this is going to shift anything for you. We definitely want to know. And now I think we've reviewed so many tools, lifestyle, nutraceuticals. We have some higher order interventions that we could try. As we get to the end of this episode, I have to put this all together and say, let's walk through a mitochondrial power day in the life. Like, if you're going to wake up and your only objective for the day is just to take care of your mitochondria, what are you going to do?
Okay, I love this. And I think that we should do this sometime. Like, let's just make this happen.
Let's do it, and then we'll blog it so everybody can see, or vlog. We'll vlog it.
Perfect. I love it. Okay, so to start out, obviously, I slept 8 hours very soundly last night. So I wake up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I will be having my coffee. Coffee is a major source of antioxidants, so I'm a huge fan of getting my antioxidants in that way. I would have a really good breakfast that has, good protein content, antioxidants, polyphenols, fiber. My go-to breakfast is like plain Greek yogurt with blueberries and some chia seeds and hemp seeds if I have them, and some cinnamon for blood sugar regulation. So I'd probably have my usual breakfast. And then I would take my supplements. I'll tell you what supplements I really am taking right now because I really am focusing on my mitochondria after all of the tests that I've been doing. Okay, so the big reveal. I take my Methylene Blue. I'm taking 5 milligrams of Methylene Blue. I take my liposomal glutathione. I take my phosphatidylcholine, and I take a polyphenol supplement. And I don't know, are we allowed to talk about brands on this?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, great. So the polyphenol supplement that I'm taking is from Pendulum. Shout out Pendulum. If you want to sponsor me, I'd love that. So they have this polyphenol supplement, and they actually designed it to help augment and support their Akkermansia product, because polyphenols help support Akkermansia levels in the body naturally. But I started taking this because it is probably the most affordable product that I can find, with a really robust dose of pomegranate extract. And pomegranate extract, I mean, allagitannins have so many amazing health benefits, right? But they're one, polyphenol rich, and they're also fantastic for lipid support. They are one of the best ways to improve HDL levels. So I was really excited about the antioxidant capacity of this polyphenol supplement. So I don't know. I don't really, like, last time I tested my Akkermansia, it was fine. So I'm not really targeting that, but I am a big fan of this polyphenol supplement just as a way to get those antioxidants and polyphenols into the diet. All right. So that's my supplement. That's my AM supplement routine. And then I've had breakfast. So I'm going to go hit the gym, going to be focusing on some strength training to build that lean muscle mass, improve my mitochondrial density. I might finish it off with a little bit of a HIIT workout to get the heart rate going. And then I'm going to do my least favorite thing, which is taking a cold shower afterwards. And then I'm going to reward myself after the cold shower for all of that hard work by spending some time in nature, because that's good for cortisol levels, and it's good for pretty much every aspect of health. I haven't seen any studies on nature for mitochondria, but maybe they're out there. We should do a study.
We'll assume.
Yeah, we'll just assume. Nature's good for everything. And then, I think it's lunchtime. So it's time to fix ourselves a meal. Probably going to go for like a salad with a whole bunch of colors. I try to put as many colors as I possibly can into my salad. So like purple cabbage, carrots, red bell pepper, nuts, seeds, some kind of protein, like wild caught salmon would be the best because of that omega-3 content, but I would be okay with some chicken or fish or other kinds of fish, or tofu as well. Some kind of healthy fat, maybe avocado. And then after lunch, I'm going to take some time in the afternoon to go through my home and take a look at all of the products that I have in my cupboard, like all of the cleaning products, all of these things, and see if there are any toxic products with questionable chemicals that could be contributing to some environmental exposures that might be hurting my mitochondria. So I'm going to take all those products, get rid of them, and then go to the store and find myself some nice eco-friendly, non-toxic alternative options. And then it's probably time to start thinking about dinner. So I'm going to prepare another meal with some really colorful vegetables, protein, healthy fat again. We're eating earlier in the evening, of course, so that we have time, give ourselves a 3-hour window before bedtime so that we can digest our food, so that our brains can really get into that deep sleep, activate our lymphatic system, and clear out those byproducts that we need for mitochondrial health in the brain. We'll do a little resting and digesting afterward, reading a book, maybe taking a little stroll outside after the meal. And then obviously this is my perfect world. So I have a really, really nice Finnish sauna at my house. So I hop in my Finnish sauna, do a nice little 30-minute sauna sesh and another cold shower. Ugh. And then maybe a little meditation and bedtime before 10. And I think that's my day.
Wow. What a beautiful day. Let's try it together and then we'll compare notes. Hope you all will try that too. And I hope everybody has taken away these little mitochondrial tidbits that it doesn't have to be anything fancy or glamorous or high tech. We really can make so much progress with lifestyle, and we're always one step closer to having healthier ovulation and more abundant fertility. So Jillian, thank you so much for being with us and sharing all these clinical insights. It's so fun to spend time with you. And thank you to our listeners for giving us your time and your energy and trusting us with your fertility tidbits. To our show's Paola Martini, thank you so much for bringing this show to life. And as my text message thread with Jillian grows and grows with all of these mitochondrial things that we discover, we'll be sure to share it with everyone. Thank you all. We'll see you next time. Did you love this episode and want to hear more? Head over to drkaliawattles.com/podcast where you can find more episodes on all things fertility.